Roth Consulting Group and Inspire Pelvic Physical Therapy. We are going to talk about pricing today. This is a topic I am super passionate about because I feel if you are priced right, you can do so much with your business and you're able to help that many more people. If you are priced well, it will allow you to hire staff sooner, even a couple months sooner. You're going to help that many more people. As cash pay practice owners, we have such an opportunity to tweak our prices. And my staff is probably going to kill me because we have changed our prices quite a bit. Because how do we know how to price? That's the big question. It's hard to price because there aren't a lot of cash pay PT/OT pelvic health clinics. So how do we know, or how do we compare? How do you even put a number on it? Should we price what personal trainers are charging in our area? Should we price what insurance would reimburse? What should the price be? I believe, and this is different than a lot of coaches in our space believe. I think a lot of our coaches tell people to look at what other people are charging in our area. But I say that the only way to know is to test the prices, because we're offering a service that is so unique and is such high demand that we can pretty much name our price. So in my area, it's a very low income area. People really are struggling financially. Our prices are $205 for treatments. If you live in probably any other area of the country, you should probably be priced quite a bit higher than that. How did I land on that price? I started my price at $130, and I did the typical thing that most people do. Okay, well, if insurance were to reimburse, it probably would be, if it were Blue Cross, it'd probably get reimbursed $130. So I'll do $130 as my price. Then I was starting to do some math, and I'm like, if I even did it $135, how much more money per week would I be making and be able to grow my business sooner? Even just a $5 price increase is huge over the span of a month. If you're seeing 20 patients a week times 4 weeks, 80 patients times $5. What's the math on that? Like 400. Okay. So you have to see 2 less patients just for increasing your price by $5. That is not bad. Actually, like 3 less patients. So yeah, just know that a little price increase makes a world of difference, first of all. Second, I was at $135, and I got some advice that if you're going to hire and scale, you got to be closer to $200. I was like, well, I do want to do that, but like no one's going to pay these prices. But I'm like, I'm going to just blindly try it. Next person that calls, they're at $185, and I said it, and it was crazy. It was shocking. I was getting more yeses at $185 than at $135. My schedule started to explode, and I was like, to my husband, Zach, who also is part of Roth Consulting Group, I was like, what is this phenomenon? It's not supply and demand, is it? Because there's still people, like, it's growing at 185 faster than at 135. What does this mean? So then I was like, well, I guess I haven't hit my price cap. So I switched then to 205. At that point, I did see a little drop. So it became a balancing act at that point. So really, it is supply and demand, but most people are not even hitting their price cap. I've talked to some people that are charging $400 some a session. and their schedules are full with a wait list. So what does that say? They probably should be charging more. At some point, there's a point where you have a price that's too high, so you're not getting enough people and the volume's going down. So you want to find that point where you're at the volume you want to be at and at the highest price you can be. And why would we want to be at the highest price? Like, isn't that going to be horrible? Like, people are not going to be able to pay, and we're not going to be able to help people that need help. Okay, PTs, OTs, you are kind people. People will pay for what they value. And if there's a demand for it, your price should be priced accordingly, in my opinion. Because, again, when you're priced well, you can more quickly scale and add therapists so you can see even more people and help even more people. So you're going to end up helping more people if you're priced higher. Also, people are going to value your service even more. I was finding the people at the $205 price point were really taking things seriously. I mean, that's, in my area, I feel like that's a pretty big chunk of change. Now, we're growing quite fast, so that's starting to tell me we could either hire another therapist or we could increase our prices. So it is a balance. Again, I feel that pricing, you should test the pricing to find the price. I think there's no way of knowing if a price isn't going to work until you test it. That is my full feeling on that. You can look at what others are charging in your area. There's a couple cash pay PTs in my area that have started after I started. I think they were inspired. But they charge about $90 a session. And I just look at that. I'm like, okay, this is good because they're not going to be able to scale. They're not going to be able to afford to hire an admin. They're going to be stuck. They actually would be making more money working for our practice, most likely, than doing their own thing. Just little, okay, I'm competitive. All right, I had to say it. No, it's good. There are enough pelvises to go around. I would say if you are looking at what your competition is pricing, make sure you're priced just a little higher than your competition because people equate price to quality and value. So if you do peek at your prices around you, do so and then price it just a little higher at least or a lot higher. You do not want to be the cheap place in town, especially if people are paying cash. They expect high quality and they're going to go to the place that charges more. Testing your prices. It is so easy to test prices in the cash pay world because we don't have rules. If you aren't sure, don't drag your feet, please. If you think you can do a different price, like your demand is still increasing or higher than you want it to be, just the next person that calls, change your price to whatever you want and test it. You can test it for 2 weeks if you're having a drop off. Now, 2 weeks is probably not enough. More ideal if you can test it over about 3 months. You test it, you're losing patients, you're not as full as you want to be, losing money, okay, then you got to go back down. If you are on the East Coast, cash pay is hot. I was looking at the map of all of the cash pay clinics, and cash pay is normal in some areas. East Coast, my friend owns a practice in San Antonio. Shout out Amanda Frank, I love you. There's only cash pay around there. So people are used to it. This is good. In years to come, cash practices are going to likely become the norm and people are going to be so used to it. We're going to be able to just name our prices, which is awesome. And it's going to be great for our field. So my friend in San Antonio, she said there's only cash practices around. And I'm like, oh my gosh. In my area, it's all insurance. Besides those couple girls that I inspired to start their cash practices. I hope they're listening to this podcast. I love you guys too. So please don't price too small. And we need to also disentangle this. I just got to say this. Your time is not worth $200 a session. And if you are pricing at $400 or $600 a session, your time is not worth $600 a session either. If you do what we do a low ball eval. It's amazing. It's worked so great for our practice. So again, every practice is different, and that's what one of my favorite things is about our coaching program is we go individual practice, and not everyone's going to do the same thing because not everything works well in certain areas. So because we live in a very heavily insurance driven area, people are not used to cash practice at all. If we get them in on a low ball eval, they're hooked. That has worked really well for us, but we've tested that. We've gotten so many more patients, and they continue their plan of care at that low ball eval. So that's another thing to test. Test out a low ball evaluation, test higher prices or lower prices. You just need to test it. Back to what I was saying. Your time is not worth $40 if that's what you're charging for your low ball eval. And that's the problem. People get really hung up on the hour amount being what their time is valued to. And as practice owners, our time is worth way more than $200 an hour. Our time is worth multiple therapists times whatever your price is. So if you're not pricing well and you can't scale, you're not valuing yourself. Same goes true if you're getting millions more patients because you do a low ball eval. Like, no, your time is not worth $40. But if you're getting them in for a $3,000 plan of care because you did a low ball eval, like, the math, it is so worth it. And if you can grow faster and then hire multiple therapists, your time is worth more than what your session price is. I see that on Facebook groups a lot. I see common themes on these groups where people are like, no, I would never do a low ball eval because my time is worth like $200. Who sets that? Why does everyone think their time's worth $200 as a PT, like, or OT? Where does that number come from? Why is everyone charging $200? If you're in California, you need to charge way more than that. So just try it. I mean, the next person that calls, if you're like in a ritzy town in Cali, you probably need to be charging $400 to $600 a session. But again, I don't know. Just test it. Your time is not worth what you're charging for your sessions. You need to charge where you're going to hit the most demand and still have yourself priced as high as you can. And you need to be strategic about it. Don't get tied up to that number being what your value is. And I encourage practices that are doing really well. If you have a long wait list, it's time to increase your price. And when I switched from 135 to 185, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a huge jump. But just try it. I was shocked. Try out a different price. If you haven't messed with your prices at all, you're really missing a lot of potential. So we've tried a high evaluation price at the 205. We just were struggling with leads. And then we switched it to our low ball price. We're getting tons of leads, but they're also purchasing plan of cares, which brings the average visit price to like $185, which I'm fine with. That's what we have to do in our area. So far, in years to come, though, it's going to change. People are going to be more used to cash practices like my friend in San Antonio, and people are going to be willing and really value specialty care. So likely in a couple years, we'll be able to increase quite a bit from there. So just stay vigilant about your prices. And again, why do we do this? Because the better we're priced, the more people are going to end up being able to help. Even though it sounds counterintuitive, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to help like someone that's poor. It's really not true. You're going to help more people if you're priced higher, and people that are quote unquote poor, just remember, say this in your head a million times, people will buy it if they value it. We have patients that come in head to toe Lululemon, and I know what neighborhood they live in, and think it's way too expensive and they don't want to purchase it. And then we have someone come in that has no money and they are using a different credit card every time they come in, and just finding a way to make it work because they value it so much and they're so grateful for what we do and how we can change their lives. So please just keep that in mind. I hope you liked this episode on pricing. Remember, the only way to know how to price your services is to test it. Don't base your prices on what other people in the cash-based world are pricing at, because they have nothing to do with what we're doing. We offer a completely unique service that is in very high demand. And if you do happen to take a little peek at what prices people are using in their area, such as if you do have other cash practices in your area, make sure you're priced a little higher at least, or quite a bit higher, because you do not want to be the cheap person on the block. All right, hope you have a great day. This is Roth Consulting Group, and we are a partnership, my husband and I, and we are ready to help you grow your practice so you can help more people.